Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Tiffany Hauser, and again, I'm a leadership coach, a corporate coach, working in the space of the people experience. I support leaders and executives with emotional intelligence, leadership, diversity and inclusion, productivity, engagement, all that good stuff. And the purpose of me coming on here live every day, is to really bring conversations into the light. I've been having a lot of powerful conversations with people, and private conversations are where you tend to take off all the filters and go really into the heart of the matter. And I thought, what a beautiful time to bring these conversations out into the light, where they're safe, where we can solve issues, heal matters, and really move things forward. And that is one of the biggest reasons and purpose of having today's guest on, who is such an incredible human being, a delight, and a sheer powerhouse. Wow, Becky, you are such a powerhouse. And, today I'm going to have Becky first tell you a little bit about herself. And then we're going to move into, a sensitive topic, domestic violence and what's going on in homes right now. In general, and then we're going to laser in on what that specifically means right now as people are isolating and quarantining right now. So please welcome Becky Lee, the founder and executive director of Beckys Fund. Becky, hi.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hey.
Are you hearing an echo, or are we okay with sound?
Good on my end.
Okay.
And you guys out there on Instagram, let us know if the sound is wonky or if it's straight up. We'd appreciate that. So tell everyone more about who you are, who you be.
Sure.
Tell us about Beckys Fund.
Sure. So as Tiffany mentioned and sort of introduced, my name is Becky Lee, and I'm the executive director and founder of Beckys Fund. This is an organization that is a nonprofit, actually housed in Washington, D.C. And our focus has been really working towards creating a future where healthy relationships flourish. And we are helping young people, men, women, people from different backgrounds, whether you're, a professional or you're working from home, different communities as well, to really help you be able to build and live in a life that's free from domestic violence. And so one of the things that we've really been focusing over the last couple of years is how do we provide people the tools as well as the opportunities to be able to understand what that means for them. What does a healthy relationship look for me? Every person is different based upon what their values are, as well as what they've seen growing up, who their role models were. But at the end of the day, everyone deserves to live in, obviously, in a loving relationship that is based on respect, based on equity, but based on, obviously, a circumstance where you're being supported. And so the work that we do through everything from direct advocacy to service, to supporting survivors and their families, to really educating and preventing this violence from occurring and continuing by working with youth, has been our main sort of our pillars over the last couple of years now.
Beautiful. And, let them know a little bit about you and
Sure.
Why you started Beckys Fund. We're going on 12 years now.
Yeah. So it's been very exciting because I think, as Tiffany mentions, when you look at the number versus feel like where you are today and also where you've come from, right? Because we're always trying to recognize how do we best support our community. And obviously over time, the needs of our community have changed. The way that we gather information, the way that we communicate with each other, the way that we seek help, all those different pieces are really important within our organization and how we are most impactful and how we're able to reach our community to be able to provide the services that are needed. So my background myself, I'm a domestic violence attorney. So I went to Michigan for undergrad, and I majored in women's studies, and then went to University of Pittsburgh to get my JD. It was really interesting because I quickly found out and saw through the different classes, but also experiences working with people, realizing that this issue, domestic violence, affects 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men, yet still because of several factors, such as the cultural stigma of being a victim, such as the point that still we victim blame and say questions like, well, why didn't you leave earlier? Or why didn't you do X, Y, Z? Basically asking questions like, why didn't you avoid getting harmed or hurt? Versus creating accountability for the crime and asking ourselves as a community, why does this person continue to get away with this crime? And so doing that shift in terms of being accountable and being proactive versus being only reactive to the actual problem is a big source of sort of, in terms of our motivation and the work that we do through Becky's Fund.
Beautiful. And, we were talking just before this, and, for those of you who don't know, I also sit on the board of Becky's Fund. And one of the things that really attracted me to the type of work that we're doing with Becky's Fund is we really speak about the holistic picture of what domestic violence is. So even before Becky, before we hopped on today, I was like, oh, you're going to explain domestic violence. I think people pretty much get it. And you reminded me that it's a whole, it's not just physical abuse. So tell the audience more about what the experience, the holistic, the complete experience is that we look at, and, a lot of DV professionals and experts look at. Mm-hmm.
Even like things like gaslighting, where you think that something is your fault when it's actually not your fault at all. But again, all these mind games that set the basis for that abuser to maintain power and control, allowing that abuser then to move to the next level, such as obviously physical harm, using even things like a pet or a child or something that the survivor loves to be able then to also maintain power and control. And then further from there, we see obviously cyber abuse, we see financial abuse, when the main number one reasons that people give in terms of why they can't leave an abusive relationship is because of finances. Whether there's no debt, there's the debt issue with credit cards and not being able to have your own finances because the abuser has basically created a situation where you are a prisoner in your own home, where you can't leave, you can't go work to save money. So this cyclical sort of abusive prison, where this abuser has been very, very specific and strategic to make sure that you're not able to leave based on all the different factors.
So recap, was it 4 different aspects? Recap.
Sure. So you have physical, obviously you have mental, you have verbal, you have financial, you have cyber.
Yeah, 5. Yeah, and that's the one that kind of was alarming to me, which was the physical, the financial abuse. That just never occurred to me that was a form of power and control over situations. And I one of the statistics, and I believe it's in regards to women and children being homeless, is a result of the financial and just domestic abuse. So it's like, I'd rather be out on the streets than, have the money be, taken in a way that is taking my power away from me. I don't know if I'm saying that in a good way.
Yeah, you are. And another thing is that people don't even realize, because I think people often say, well, once you're gone, once you've left that abusive relationship, now everything's fine. But both 2 areas, one is the emotional, psychological sort of quote damage, the effects of that abusive relationship you carry with you. And so, issues obviously discussing intimacy, trust, even starting over again and trying to rebuild yourself up to be able to get in another healthy relationship, in the future. The other side, also the financial. We have seen so many stories where we had this term called coerced debt, where an abuser is very smart, opens up a credit card or ruins someone's credit, or they can't in the future open up a credit card or get a mortgage or sign an agreement for a new lease because of ruining all those situations and that stability that the survivor would need to obviously start fresh.
Wow. So this goes deeper than just, wow, that's a lot of control, a lot of power.
Right.
So, Becky, the reason for us getting together today also was to, walk people through and really shine a light on what's happening right now in, as a result of where we are quarantining ourselves and, unable to go out into the world per se, and what that really means to people whose home environment might be toxic.
Sure. So I think one of the things that none of us sort of realize until we realize the impact of what it means to be self-quarantine in your home, because at the end of the day, most people think your home is your safest place, right? You create a home to be the safest place with the things that you need, with the people that you love and care about. And so this whole idea of self-quarantine actually having a negative impact, I think a lot of people were just like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And so the whole hashtag, even seeing that, what does it really mean to be safer at home or safe at home? Obviously, if you don't have the resources or the ability to be able to not be in that situation, being self-quarantined with your abuser is basically a survivor's worst nightmare. I mean, there's no space, there's no opportunities, obviously, in terms of being able to release stress, be able to, put obviously distance, protecting yourself, not just physically, but also mentally. Obviously, right now with kids also being at home, there's all these different factors. Add on the fact that we don't have sports, we don't have a gym to go release stress. Obviously, they still have to laid off. So all these different.
Wow. I mean, what a bigger piece, and it's interesting because when I was thinking about this, like my heart was hurting and it wasn't even, I didn't go as deep as you just went in regards to not having the outlets, the sports, the job, the gym, the just friends, right? So when you're out in the world, these are outlets to release some of that anger, some of those emotions, some of that, mental release that we all, no matter who we are, get to, have. And I hadn't even thought about it in that regard. So, wow. And, one thing I want to touch on too is, people are in that situation because that's their situation. And one thing I want us to just kind of address as well is if that might be a new situation for people, that they're just starting, this isolation is bringing out a not so flavorful side of people for whatever reasons, fear, concern, worry, like stress, anger, whatever, that if we talk about it from both the people that this has been their lifestyle and people, the signs and like things that we can start looking at if this might be something we feel is bubbling up. And may I pause you just one moment? Can you hear yourself on Zoom? Can you hear you and I on Zoom? Not because I lost the audio on Zoom, but you can hear both of us on Zoom. Like you can hear yourself. Okay, great. Then it's working. I don't know what's going on over here, but technology day. Can you hear both of us on Zoom?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, there. I don't know. Whatever you did, the sound just came back on.
Okay.
Okay. So go ahead. Continue into that.
Sure. So I think what you're asking basically about this is not a new problem, right? Domestic violence has been around for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that people are finally realizing what that impact in terms of self-quarantine, and also to asking like, what can we do? How can we support somebody who's going through this? Realistically speaking, what does that support even look like? So obviously domestic violence agencies, organizations, shelters are essential for services. So the doors are open. And just because obviously many of these facilities in terms of in-person intake, we're obviously in trying to prevent the spread of COVID-19, many services all over the country are still available, but going through obvious online chats,
Mm-hmm.
discussions, as well as like Zoom and Skype to be able to still provide the resource. But I think the bigger question.
We're going to be talking about those resources in a moment. So we're not leaving you hanging. We're going to talk about it. We're going to post it. We're going to have everything available that we're talking about today. Okay, continue.
But I think a lot of people are frustrated because they're like, well, if I can't get to shelter, what else is available for me?
Mm-hmm.
If I can't get out of this situation in this home with my abuser and I'm trapped, why should I even call for help? And so our point is that as advocates, as friends, as colleagues, as people who understand the situation, our biggest thing is, how do I help that person just become safer?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the question, and that's what we've been trying to talk about. All of us, regardless of who you are, because of this crisis, our whole country, we're all experiences, I'm struggling with mental health. And so I think that right there is one point where we've been, sort of sharing. If you're able to reach out to that person safely, making sure that you understand that often abuser controls finances, which includes your phone plan. So if there's ways that you can check in with that person, maybe even through a chat or online, as well as even offering, let's meet for a walk. You have to get groceries for the family today, so that's an essential service. So let's maybe meet up to go fulfill the needs that you need to help with the household. But it's that whole point of that open line of communication. I think that right now has been the hardest thing, is saying survivors being, I'm alone, I'm isolated, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to take this, because, in the big picture of things, we still don't have deadlines. We don't have accuracy of news saying when this whole sort of process is going to end. And even after the process, what does that even look like after COVID-19 is over? Mm-hmm. And so I think often in a normal situation where you have certainty, most people, I think, have anxiety saying, well, how do I plan if I don't know the end to plan for? Mm-hmm. So we really been, sharing, through Becky's Fund, but also other advocacy organizations, is sharing accurate information, but also keeping that open line of communication open, and basically understanding, what does it mean to listen? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a big part, is a lot of our conversations often in our community, we're often waiting to talk, waiting to answer, waiting to provide XYZ, instead of just listening. Mm. So a big piece is, I think, the listening.
So to recap, for anyone out there that might be experiencing a toxic, or violent or abusive experience right now in your home, is that, all domestic violence agencies, advocacies are essential businesses. They are essential. They are open, and we're going to be providing information here on Instagram, Facebook, all channels. You could also always go to our website, beckysfund.org. And then the next thing is to to choose, not figure out, but to choose a way that feels safe mm-hmm. for you to communicate with someone outside of your home. Becky shared that, in a lot of cases of domestic abuse, that it may not be physical, but it is that financial, it is that, mental, psychological control. and knowing that the abuser might have access to the phone, to the email, to the computer. So what she suggested is maybe, meeting a friend at the grocery store, or walking to the grocery store with a friend, or whatever errand is essential for that time. And Becky, what I'd love to hear, or what I'd love for you to share now, is what does that conversation look like? What are some safe ways to have that conversation? And I know you said listening, and listening feels like for the ally, the friend on the other end of that conversation, but what are some safe ways to kind of navigate through that conversation in this time?
Sure, that's a great question. I think right now everyone is yearning for connection, yearning for that human interaction. I think that, even personally for myself, when I've been communicating with friends or with family, purposely going straight to video phone to have that interaction. So in the same way, survivors right now are in this space where, not only are they trying to just keep it together for themselves, but also their children, but really trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. And so, as you mentioned, even the checking in piece, that constant sort of easy communication and, saying hello, that is also normal right now because we're all doing it, right? So it's not something out of the ordinary, like making a 911 call, but really just keeping that connection open, and being able to be that sort of comforting sort of just line of just saying hello, trying to maintain that human connection. Because I think that's been really big for a lot of people, saying that the isolation, even with someone that has not experienced domestic violence, that's been one of the hardest things to manage.
Yeah.
Because we are all experiencing, we're all trying to figure out what we need personally to manage that level of anxiety, whether it's like, taking a bath, or, doing a TikTok video, which I know a lot of people are doing with dance, but everyone is, it's very specific to what their needs are. So I encourage people, if they know somebody in this situation, so just do those check-ins. You don't even have to talk about what that person's going through, but mentally helping them understand that you are an open line of communication.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. So it's not even directly like, because the thing that I've noticed sometimes is, when we go direct, it kind of like doesn't feel safe. Yeah. It doesn't feel safe. And then, we're not understanding where the other person is in the moment. That person might be right there,
right,
or the children might be right there. And it might not be the moment to, go in and answer that question.
Right.
And, okay, beautiful. So I really love this. And, I love that we're also speaking to the allies, the people that can support and want to support. And that's one of the beautiful and powerful pieces of the Men of Code program that we put together and run through high schools, which is that bystander intervention, which, works outside of domestic violence, but it's such a powerful tool, because sometimes when we see things, we tend to not say anything because we don't feel safe, or we deflect by saying that's not my business, I shouldn't get involved. And I don't think most people want, I think authentically we want to support and help in the moment, yet we don't have the tools. We don't have the tools. So walk us through a little bit about, a little bit of safe bystander intervention when it comes to this specific area of domestic violence. Because it's a real tool that a lot of us could use.
Sure. So I think that some of the considerations that often come into bystander intervention also go along the terms of discussing what a safety plan looks like and what a safety plan is.
Mm-hmm.
And so for every person, wherever they are, typically when an advocate talks to somebody about what is your safety plan, usually it's the plan to get them out of the house, into shelter, moving on forward, away from the abuser, right? So right now in this time, realistically speaking, we're trying to help give education about how do you provide a safety plan by just being safer while you're still at home with your abuser. And so, like you mentioned, some of the things that we're sharing about having that conversation when you're able to do it safely about what does that plan look like if you need support right away? Would you know where to go if you needed to leave the house right then? Do you have a plan in place where you're able to tell your children, okay, if we leave right away, you know exactly what we're going to do. Don't ask questions and just come. Maybe there's even a way where your neighbor and you are able to have that conversation where if the left blind is down when it should be up, I need you to call 911. I'm in trouble. Or even things like understanding how to have your phone close by to you at all times, even having maybe some of the emergency phone numbers saved in there under a different name. So if you need them quickly, you don't have to look for it. You know exactly where to go to call it. Maybe it's named with an A, so it's the first number in your phone.
Yep.
And there's also things, obviously, in terms of recognizing, having those resources on hand. A lot of times, I think I've heard even stories where survivors are scared to look up something on their computer with a fear that the abuser will be able to look in the history or find that you logged out into this one program. And so even being able to pull up information and resources for the survivor, for your neighbor, for your colleague, to be able to share that information quickly and saying, here is the phone number or here's where you should go to, receive services to chat with this advocate. So a lot of these support services are the plan to put in place before actual needing them. Because as we all know, like if you've ever been in a car accident, you forget where your license is or where your things are. So when we're in crisis mode, often, many people, whether you're in freeze or the flight phase, it's hard to think logically. Yeah. So a big piece that I always share with allies who want to help, especially in this circumstances where all we have is time, right, is being able then to share those resources by finding them out ahead of time for that person. And again, being that open resource.
I love that, Becky, because that's just so relevant to what's going on right now, that having a plan in play before we actually need it, and having that kind of, relationship and communication with an ally, and what's really beautiful is allies come in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes we don't even realize that, someone across the street or the checkout woman at Target or Trader Joe's is ready to help, ready to help. So beautiful. So, let's move into now, homes where there's actually children in right now, where it's not just a spouse or a partner, it now involves children. What are some of the things that we can think about in this space?
Sure. So from the very start, children crave consistency and feeling safe. They want to feel that they're loved. And so if it's domestic violence, if it's COVID-19, any type of situation where there's this influx, children can feel it and they can see it around the people that they love and they look up to. So it starts really, being a role model yourself, because children, they're sponges. They reflect, they mirror what we're feeling, what we're seeing, what we're doing. So I always start there. But then, get out of your comfort zone. Right now, there's a lot of emotions that the children will be going through, everything from anxiety, fear, like going crazy, needing to get their energy out, and also anger. Like, why can't I use this time where I'm not in school to go play with my friends? Why can't I do X, Y, Z? I want my life back. And so we encourage parents in these situations to, do activities with them. Whether that's simple things like painting, dancing, reading a book, taking a walk, doing a virtual tour of a museum online. But, really engaging them to help them understand what's going on. And so I think often parents also are afraid of creating maybe fear by telling what's going on. But I think it's really important to have those honest conversations in a way that's easy to understand for the child or teen. Mm-hmm. But also then being a role model in terms of how are you relieving your mental health, issues with stress. I think that's a big part too, is because they look to you saying, well, you're telling me not to stress out, but you're not doing those things as well. And so, especially we're in this situation, we're seeing each other 24/7. There's no breaks. There's no spaces for, taking a vacation from that person. And so I think that's a big part is open communication, but understanding that I think right now children need that a little more extra attention.
Yeah.
to feel that they're cared for, that this too will pass, and that we're in this together.
Beautiful. Amazing. So let's move into now the employer and employee. So what does this all mean? You know, and I get, you know, the
Sure.
whole working from home and,
Sure.
you know, so what about the employer that doesn't know that one of their employees has a toxic home life and, you know, being responsible for work, productivity, results, whatever the case may be?
Sure.
What do we say to the employer?
So it's interesting because I think that people aren't really thinking about this this opportunity, because most people are working from home and they're thinking, well, how can I receive support from my employer when I'm not in the office space? But because work is still going on in offices, you know, we have that space and we have the technology and the opportunity to be able to communicate online. I think it's an amazing opportunity for employers to be able to use that work relationship to also offer support. Because I think the biggest part of this situation right now is how do we provide advocacy? How do we support in a way that's safe? And if you can use the guise of work, I feel like that's where employers have an opportunity to still support, provide resources, and be able to help their employees stay safe during the situation. This sad part of this, you know, is that often employees, survivors, have often used their work environment as their refuge.
Yeah.
So that physical place, that physical, opportunity is gone. But still the work relationship, and that, I think that piece can be taken advantage of in this time, where the employer still can have that open line of communication with the employee.
So what just, excuse me, what just came up for me is, what does the person say?
Sure.
Like if they've never quote unquote come out of the closet, so
Sure.
like, you know, which why would they? In many cases, and some do.
Sure.
But is this a time now to come out of the closet and let your employer know? And if so, how? What
Sure.
is a, you know, in a way that's not like, you know, completely
Sure.
one-sided?
Sure. I think that
It's a
due
big
to
one.
the circumstance of where we are right now, I think a lot of people are putting formalities to the side, because we're just trying to get Zoom to work, right? So we can talk to each other. We're trying to get this deadline because we have this project that's due that is going to be due no matter what, that if we don't get it done. So I think a lot of the ego or the formalities of being uncomfortable and asking a question, I think we're pushing this aside. I see a lot of people saying, you know, like, you know what, this situation right now, put that other stuff aside. I need to just communicate with you, like person to person, human to human. And I think that's been an ability that many of us see that we are being appreciative of. Because I think that question came out, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, with a friend saying, do you think we'll be communicating differently after COVID-19 is over? Where now I see Tiffany, I see your background, I see your home, I see that what you see every day when you wake up in the morning. I see, you know, your dog, I see your child walking in the background. So there's a little more humanity than just seeing that you're my colleague that sits next to me and that we work on this project together. So I think there's a little bit more capacity for kindness and that extra piece where maybe an employee in the past might have said, well, it's not my business what's happening at home, even though it might affect our productivity, but to be able to go there now because of the way that we are communicating now.
Powerful. So what I'm hearing you say is that we get to just be authentic right now and vulnerable. Like, this is not comfortable. And I get to let you know exactly what I'm experiencing. Maybe not the full thing, but this is, you know, what I'm up against now that I'm at home and being responsible for my workload, whatever that looks like. You know, which is the same, not the same, but it's similar to the conversation of like, I got a household of kids behind me as well. Very different, but you know, we're like, and I love that example of the humanity and the kindness of now seeing each other's homes and seeing we're more than just Karen in HR, you know, who does our benefits or our payroll, things like that. So I really love that piece. Thank you for bringing that forward. So in the last few moments that we have together today, let's talk about, you know, I know you had a slide, which we won't be able to see on Instagram, but for anybody who joins us later and watches the replay on Facebook or LinkedIn, did you want to share anything from the slides?
Sure.
Yeah.
See if I can take a picture of them.
Well, I can share it.
So I can share the slides obviously with, you know, when we post the videos, but basically talking about everything from supporting.
Which slide would you like
from the different pieces, whether it's employer, whether it's your friend. And so I think one of the basic places at the end, people often ask, well, what can I do? How can I, whether it's someone in specific that you want to reach out to and help, or even learning more about, you know, this issue. And if you are in a circumstance in the future, wanting to be able to use your capacity, your relationship with that person to offer support. I think really begins with
on Instagram,
learning to just listen, you know, rather than listening and then trying to respond with an answer right away, listening and offering that open line of communication, saying, I'm here if you need me. I'm here if you need support. I'm here in whatever capacity you need.
Can you hear me?
And giving that person the outlet to be able to lean on you for support. Also, you know, understanding the resources, whether they're local or, you know, sort of national hotline, the domestic violence hotline, which I will also allow,
can you hear me?
You know, share with the resources for that, so you can be able to see that. And then, you know, we are a resource at Beckys Fund. Within our website, we have so many different pieces of conversations and videos that show you what if you're in this circumstance, how should you react? How should you respond? As well as, you know, a big part of this even discussion is the fact that every one of us plays a part in shifting the culture from victim blaming, and shifting the culture of, you know, adding our voice, adding our story to the collective. You look at the impact of Me Too and people coming forward, and the amazing sort of work that was able to be accomplished by coming together. One of the biggest, you know, pieces of this whole problem is that people feel that it's their fault. People feel that they're alone. They also think that they'll be blamed for the domestic violence. And so even just taking away all that shame and that stigma by talking about it openly, talking about the statistics, that it's not just, you know, something that someone being crazy or paranoia, but the real facts. And whether you've been personally affected by it or not, by understanding, you know, why domestic violence still is, you know, an issue of our country, as well as what the available resources are, that is, you know, adding to the story, adding to collective of helping end and prevent domestic violence for the future.
I love it. I don't think you can you hear me?
Can
you hear me?
Let's see.
I think you lost, can you hear me through your computer?
Yeah, I think my, for some reason, my Instagram.
No, it's okay, but can you hear me through the Zoom, the computer?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I was trying to let you know that we lost you on Instagram, which is okay. I'm showing my screen through Instagram.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But no, it's okay. That was really powerful and really useful. So I'm showing the screen of the available resources, which we're going to post online as well. And, you know, as Becky said, a lot of this information is on our website, beckysfund.org. So we invite you to ask questions, to reach out. If you have any insight, if you have any expertise, any insight in this area, we would love to hear from you as well. We are not the experts. Becky is just aggregating and curating all these things that she's come across over the past 2 decades that really work for the state of survivors, and what really works in regards to educating and preventing, you know, the cycle that keeps continuing within domestic violence. You know, myself included, I grew up in a household of domestic violence, and you know, it was intense. It was traumatic, to be frank. And, a lot of these things, like, had I known this, when I was a teenager, it would have changed a lot of what was, what was going on in my home. And to be honest, to speak into what you said earlier, I had perfect attendance in school, all throughout school, because school was better. It was better to be in school than to be at home for me. I just really felt like it was such a beautiful, powerful distraction and didn't hurt that I was learning a lot and experiencing a lot of things. But and that's one of the things that I really wanted to have you on today, to just shine a light on those who are home right now in an environment, a home environment that is toxic and is not, what you said earlier, not a safe space, that, they don't have the fortunes we have right now. And I'm not talking about financial fortunes, but the fortunes of security, peace of mind, safety. So, Becky, anything you want to recap or share as we complete today?
I just think at the end of the day, regardless if you are, your expertise or your experience in having a difficult conversation with somebody who's experienced this, right now you matter so much in being able to, just check in and say hello, if it's just a simple hello and, what's going on. I haven't talked to you in a while. I think that right now, the human connection, we're all craving the connection with other people, whether they're old friends, family members, but that's so important. And so if you're able to do that and reach out, text, chat in a safe way to somebody you think that might be in the situation, I know that they would very much appreciate it, and it would make a big sort of piece of their healing process and trying to figure out how do they maintain their mental health, not just for themselves but also for the people that they are also taking care of. So understand that you matter, and we really the only way that we can move past this, because we will get through this, it will be difficult, but really that every person plays a role in trying to help really prevent, but also end domestic violence.
Beautiful. And there was just a question that came across. How do we know someone is experiencing challenging times in their home around safety and security? How do we know? How do we know to become the ally?
Sure. So I think, again, a lot of times everyone's different. Right now, like I was talking about, when I'm having a conversation with my friend or someone I haven't spoken to in years, right now I think a lot of the formalities of playing catch up are going out the window. And often, you're saying, what's going on? What are you doing? Typically it would be nice if we could have an obvious sign, like a bruise, right? Like I just actually burnt my neck with a curling iron the other day. And you think about like things that obviously by through Zoom, through the phone, you can sort of hear someone's voice, hear how they're sounding. But again, ask the questions and say, how are you doing? And that's not a how are you doing like, oh, I'm fine, just to get to the next question or next conversation, but really ask. I think even things like, how are you feeling? I think that question itself can be something that can then lead down to, oh, you're not sleeping very well, or is it anxiety, or are you not eating? I understand obviously COVID can be causing, stress of the unknown, or the fact that we're hearing about all these different stressors that people are going through, whether it's unemployment, whether it's not being able to stand the people that you're right now stuck with at home. But ask those additional questions, to ask more sort of abstract, then to be able to then ask follow-up questions, say, well, is there something that I can help you with? Do you need some support with? And so allow that open window, the open line of communication, where then they feel comfortable enough, that they trust you enough, that they can be able to open that door to share it with you.
Yeah. So is it possible, could we put together some sort of a question checklist, just
Yes.
of some ideas?
Yes.
We'll post them on our website and on Facebook and all the other platforms, because that's a great point you make, to differentiate between, like, is this just because we're quarantined, or is something going on?
Yes.
Something happening that you might need support with in regards to your safety and your security. Yes. So I love that. So look out for that. We'll let you know where that resource and all those questions can be located. And in our last board meeting we had, we talked about having online on our website all of the past content and past events and experiences that we put together.
Yes.
Specifically for the Men of Code program. Yes. Can you tell the audience in the last few minutes we have just a little bit about Men of Code and kind of the content people can find online,
Sure.
which is suitable for all ages. Well, what, 12 and over, 14 and over?
I mean, yeah, I think one of the things that Tiffany, you're talking about is content right now. It's a great time while we're at home, while we're on our phones. I mean, the stage for internet, you can become an internet sensation right now. You know, everyone's on their phones. And so we are trying to figure out a way in terms of being able to give you access to this content, to some of the lessons that we teach during the Men of Code program, including everything from what it means to be a leader. You know, what it means to be a leader if you're not the type that wants that microphone with the, front center, but the leader that is from behind the scenes. What it means to understand how to talk to somebody about consent and about what consent is, not just legally, but what consent looks like in the normal modern world, or even in a relationship. And so
not only to young
lessons
men, but grown adults too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so many of these lessons that we teach, we are going to be putting basically little snippets with the videos on social media. And right now, currently, we have medico.org, which you can look at, as well as a section through the beckysfund.org website. But we're looking also to share some stories and interviews. I just taped an interview with one of our students who graduated already from one of the high schools, who's now also sort of reflecting about, what's going on, as well as where his life is moving forward. As we talk about even leadership in this space and what that means to be, as whether it's a bystander intervention or someone who's, really active, saying, well, I saw this happening in my own family with my father being abusive and my sister being a part of it. What's my role? What's my role as both a brother and a family member? But also too, what is my role with my father in that situation? So that content and those videos and the links will be placed on the beckysfund.org website. If you will take a look at the Men of Code section, you can learn more. And again, Men of Code is just a tool for us to be able to use and bring together these conversations that we can give with a toolbox and the speaking sort of scenarios where you can then also share in your own lives. So like Tiffany mentioned, you can take those lessons and then apply them in your own specific scenarios, whether it's helping somebody go through and also leave domestic violence or sexual assault, as well as how do you cope. I think one of the biggest things that we're trying to sort of confront and understand currently during COVID-19 is how to cope with trauma, how to cope with stress, how to cope with crisis, but how to do it in a way where it fits for us. Right now, a big part of our coping has been, I think, very much intermingled with the isolation, being at home.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's one of those things where people say, well, this is not working for you, do something else. So I think it's being creative with being, with understanding in tune with yourself. What do I need to be able to get these emotions of anger away? What do I need to get the stir crazy feeling of anxiety or even depression away? And so, these lessons will allow you to open those conversations, not just with other people, but also with yourself. Because I think sometimes the hardest thing is to look in the mirror and be honest and say, well, this is why I'm acting this way towards that person, or why I can't get past this hurdle, is because I first have to be honest with who I am and what I'm doing to maybe be a part of that.
I love it. What a great place to end. I love that. Looking at ourselves as well, which has been, an overarching theme of all of the interviews that I've been bringing to everyone live today. So, Becky, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your patience and, powering through this despite, some of the technical difficulties. The live ended on Instagram already. So this video will be uploaded onto Facebook and LinkedIn once it's downloaded. Any last thoughts before we say goodbye for today?
I just, give, be kind. I encourage everyone to, tell the people that you care about, that you love, that you maybe, I think that right now is a great time really just to reconnect. But understanding, I mean, every day I'm waking up, even though sometimes some of the things I can't do, I'm healthy. I'm surrounded by people that I love and that love me, and really just opening each day with gratitude and how helpful that is in terms of looking at the big picture, and also being able to help me with my mental health as well.
Beautiful. Becky Lee, thank you so much And we can find a lot of what you talked about today on beckysfund.org.
Yes.
And thank you so very much for your time and the space that, you know, has been a private conversation for a lot of people. And thank you for shedding light in an area that can use a lot of light right now. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a beautiful rest of your day. We'll see you tomorrow, everyone.
Yes.
Bye, guys.